Good morning, everyone. This is Kyle Constant, Digital Services Librarian at Trails Regional Library. Welcoming you again to another online training. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about periodicals through OverDrive. Now this is a new service that OverDrive is offering. We've used OverDrive for quite a while, and we have ebooks and audiobooks, and we even have some streaming video through OverDrive. But a group of libraries in our consortium were very interested in trying out periodicals, and some of them didn't have the money to do something like Zinio, and so they wanted to check out what OverDrive service would be like. And since they already had a consortium set up, then they thought maybe they could do some cost sharing. And sure enough, if we split the cost, then the cost to individual libraries is dramatically lower than it would be if we all got Zinio. So our investment in this at Trails is pretty minimal, and that's why we're doing it. We still have Zinio. We still have access to all of those titles that we pay for through Zinio, but we're doing this in addition to just sort of pilot it, see how successful it is, see if patrons like it. One big advantage that I can see that this will have over Zinio is just exposure, because people who normally use OverDrive, which for us is a very successful electronic resource, they'll see these magazines as well. So that's one big benefit of this. We're going to try it for a year and see what happens. We'll kind of compare stats and see whether we want to continue with Zinio or with OverDrive, and kind of go from there. We'll reevaluate it in about a year. So that's kind of our thought process. And now I'll show you basically how it works. And I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, so this should look very familiar to most of you. This is just the OverDrive website. The first part of this, of using the periodicals, is entirely website based. So whether they get there through an internet browser on a computer or an internet browser on a tablet, or really any device is fine. That really makes little difference, but this is where they should start. And as I always say, the first thing you should do when you get to Missouri Libraries to Go is you should sign in. And I've got a test barcode here that Kathy was very gracious to give me. So I'll go ahead and sign in with that. Once I'm signed in, then I have I can go ahead and browse the different materials that we have. Now, one thing I will say is the collection of periodicals that we have through OverDrive is very different from what we have on Zinio. It was selected, each library selected a few titles, and we're each paying for our own. So you've got a pretty big variety of materials here. And I just clicked on View More just to kind of show you how many we have. We do have, you can see this is page 1 of 6. It says right there. We do have quite a few titles. Some, again, are going to be a little bit more interesting to different patrons than others, as is going to be the case with anything. So who knows which ones are going to end up being popular with our folks, but we can run statistics and find that out. But any one of these can be checked out, and we'll just start with this one, the AARP magazine. One thing that you can do is, as with any other title on OverDrive, you can just click the title, or if you're on a mobile device, tap the title and get more information. So you've got all sorts of information here. Just to start off with, the available format is only in Nook periodicals. So OverDrive uses the Nook app or the Nook devices to look at periodicals. So what that means is essentially that if you have a device that can download the Nook app, either an iPad, iPhone, or an Android device, then you can get that Nook app and use this service. If you don't have something that can download the Nook app, for instance, a Kindle Fire, you're going to have some difficulty. It is possible to get that Nook app on there for Kindle Fires, And I would say at this point, as far as how much we're going to support Kindle Fires with this service, I would allow patrons to know that it is possible, but complicated and somewhat difficult to get that Nook app on there. It is actually, I think, a little bit easier to use Zinio with a Kindle Fire. So, of course, in our evaluation, that's a point against the periodicals on OverDrive. Nevertheless, it does work with anything that has the capability of downloading the Nook app or a dedicated Nook device. So if they have any of those Nooks that are produced by Barnes & Noble, then it will work directly with those as well. So some other information that is useful to note here is that we have available and we have copies. So periodicals will work a little bit differently than our ebooks and our audiobooks. Periodicals have a specific number of checkouts per issue that are allowed, similar to Zinio. So when you look at AARP, for instance, each issue, and this one, the most recent one, I don't see a date on it. Let's see. I'm not sure if we have a date on this one. Anyway, each issue, as they come out, will have 250 possible checkouts. And you can see there are 245 available. So that means that AARP, this issue of AARP, has already been checked out 5 times. So there's no waiting, there's no holds. None of that is an issue. But when we get to that 250, they're gone. There's no more availability. So again, this is very similar to Zinio. Zinio works the same way. What I have found is that in some cases, we have seen a dramatically lower number of available copies for the same magazine in OverDrive than we have in Zinio. And we'll see over the course of the year how many instances where that becomes an issue. If we have people that are wanting to check out magazines and are unable to, then again, we'll have to include that in our evaluation of this service versus Zinio. Something else to remember about this is that this is available to all the libraries in the consortium. And we're nearing, or we're right at, about 100 libraries in our consortium. So when you look at it that way, this is only 2.5 copies per library. And when you consider how many patrons each library serves, there's a definite possibility that we could run out. But again, I think we've all seen that magazines are slightly dwindling in their popularity. So who knows? It may not be an issue at all. We'll just wait and see. So again, you have something else to look at over here is that we have subjects. So if you click on this, then you'll get other titles that are in the same subject matter. Again, still sticking with periodicals. So you've got other things that are interested or concerning health and wellness. And we'll just hit the back button and go right back to AARP, the magazine. So again, this works very similarly to a lot of other materials on OverDrive. If you want to add it to a wish list, you can. There really isn't much need to add to a wish list unless, of course, you want to, for instance, have a wish list for the magazines that you commonly check out. That's maybe the only thing that I can think of, because you're not waiting for magazines. You're not putting anything on hold. You're not limited to a certain number of magazines, things like that. So the wish list is maybe a little bit more limited in usefulness. So we'll go ahead and click on Send to Nook app. So this is in place of Borrow for ebooks. And what will happen is you're taken over to the Barnes & Noble sign-in. Now, there is a pop-up that shows up before this that I clicked, don't show me this again, thinking that it would only not show me for the account that I was already signed in as, and I'm signed into a different account now. Just be aware that there's a pop-up between OverDrive and being brought over to this. But The only thing that it says is you're going to be taken over to Barnes & Noble to sign into a Barnes & Noble account if you have one. If not, you can register for one in a one easy step. So if I had a Barnes & Noble account, then I could put in my email and password and I could get started. What I'm going to do is register a new account so you guys can see what that process looks like. All that I'm doing in this step is I'm tying the barcode number that I just put in to OverDrive to a Barnes & Noble account, so that in the future, when I set up, or excuse me, whenever I send periodicals to the Nook app, what that's doing is it's tying the things that are checked out by barcode X to Barnes & Noble account Y. Now, I should only have to do this one time. Whether you already have a Barnes & Noble account or you don't, you still have to go through this step so that you can tie the two things together. Once that's done, I'll show you in a moment. Once that's done, checking out periodicals in the future will just pop up a little notice similar to borrowing an ebook that, hey, you've just checked this thing out. You can find it here. So let's go ahead and get through the registration process, and I can show you some of the other steps. So I click no, I don't have an account, I want to register. So it's just going to ask for full name, email address. I'm just going to put in this information real quickly. And get signed up. Security question, what city were you born? And we'll just say, okay. So then I click create account. And now it's asking me, it's popping up and showing me that this is what it's actually wanting me to sign in for, which is granting access. So it says OverDrive is requesting permission. Let me blow that up just a little bit to see, so that you guys can read that a little bit easier. OverDrive is requesting permission to access your Barnes & Noble account. This is required in order to add the borrowed items to your Nook account. You can read the added content on any of the Nook apps on iOS, Android, Windows, or Nook device. So this is what I was saying. You're signing in not just to create an account or not just to show that you have it. It's specifically wanting permission to tie your library card number or the patron's library card number with your Barnes & Noble account. And again, I will show you in just a moment where that comes in. So I'm going to click Grant Access. And then it pops me right back. And again, here's this pop-up that I was telling you about that you'll get whenever you check out things in the future. It just says you've successfully sent AARP, the magazine, to your Nook device or Nook Reading app. And here's some information here about getting, obviously it's a periodical history. You can see what you've checked out, but also it shows some information about how to get the apps. So it says, this is a list of periodicals that have been sent to your Nook. You can read these on any Nook tablet or in free Nook reading apps on iOS, Android, and Windows 8. It says Windows 8, but I just received an email in a listserv that I was using yesterday from the consortium that somebody said they had tested it in Windows 10. It works in Windows 10 as well. I don't know for sure about 7. There may not be a Windows 7 app. But there certainly is on iOS, Android, and Windows 8 or higher. So, and then you can learn more about reading periodicals with Nook by going to this tab. I'm going to open that, or going to this link rather. I'm going to open that in a new tab real quick just to show you. OverDrive Help, I think, actually does have some pretty good pages on this stuff. And if you just go to help.overdrive.com, you can get to categories of assistance for ebooks, audiobooks, whatever. Their videos are actually pretty good. I realize that I'm taking you through this now, but they actually do have a video right here on periodicals that is really good. And in 2.5 minutes, you can go through this process. Now, I think they simplify it a little bit and they don't go through it as slowly and as methodically as I'm doing, but it gives you a general overview of what you need to do. So I would encourage your staff or even your patrons to come through here and take a look at these videos if they need help getting started with any piece of the OverDrive puzzle, because they really do have good videos. They just, in my opinion, kind of do a terrible job of making those videos as obvious or as exposed on their site as they should. So that's that. Now, I want to show you what it looks like now that I'm signed in and now that the account is tied to my barcode number. The two things are tied together. I'm going to check out this one just to show you again. See, now I don't have that intermediary step. It just pops up and says you successfully sent this to your Nook, and it takes me to my periodical history. Again, giving me a little bit of information about iOS, Android, and Windows 8, and the help guide there. So the way that you actually interact with these in order to read them is to, again, download the app or have a Nook tablet. I'm going to show you what it looks like to get the app started on a mobile device. And to do that, I'm going to share a different window with you. Okay, so this is an Android emulator, so it looks roughly like what an Android device would look like. And you can see I've got a bunch of different apps here. And over here on the right side in the middle, I've got the Nook app. So I'm just going to click on that, tap on it if it was on a mobile device, and get started. So when it pops up, then I have the option to either explore the app or sign in. Because I already have things that I want to download and read, I don't really need to necessarily explore the app. I need to get signed in so that it can recognize that I have those things available to me and get them downloaded. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in. And this is the Nook account that I just set up. So I used this email address and I set up this password. And I'm going to click sign in. And it always pops up this option, like Amazon. You know, there's other, like the Kindle app, there's other materials available within the Nook app. And so it has this intermediary step where it says add a credit card. It's very simple to just click skip. And then, of course, then they pop. I say it's very simple. Then they pop up and say, are you really sure you want to skip this? Just say, yeah, I don't add a credit card. And then you can skip past that step. So once on your initial setup, whenever you first get signed in, it's going to have some basic tutorials here about how to use the app. So it's going to tell you, visit home, jump into your latest read or explore today's recommended content. You can either swipe or just click or tap next to get past these. And it's telling you just a little bit about where the menu is, how to use it, where to get to more of their content, which of course then you can purchase. Something to note is that, and Karen Hicklin and I have both gone through this process since the introduction of periodicals to our consortium, and it appears that these four materials right here, the Secret Garden, this Better Homes and Gardens issue, this issue of Esquire, and A Tale of Two Cities, are added to every Nook account. I'm not sure why. The Secret Garden and A Tale of Two Cities, you know, a lot of instances, Kindle apps do the same thing. They will add some public domain works just so you have something in there rather than just being blank. And I'm assuming that's probably what this is too. And Better Homes and Gardens and Esquire probably have a deal with Barnes and Noble to throw a free issue at new members as well to probably entice them into using their magazines through the Nook app. So once you're here, you can see Air & Space is trying to download now. It takes a little while for magazines to download, but once they do, then it operates very similarly to Zenio. We'll give that a minute to do that. You do also have a menu over here. Now, again, this is a Nook app, and so of course you've got different options over here than you would in, say, a library app. You've got the shop, you've got Barnes and Noble information here, you've got messages. You do also have your settings. If you want to come in and make changes to your settings, you can do that in here. If you want to mess with your account, you can actually sign back out here and sign in with a different account and have those magazines that are tied to a different account signed in and downloaded and available to this app at that point. There are a lot of different bits of information here that you can use, and lots of things that you can configure to your taste. If you want to only allow certain things to be downloaded, if you only want downloads to be over Wi-Fi, you can do that. If you want to manage how much storage it takes up, then you can change that through this dialog. There's a lot of things that you can configure. And really what I'm trying to do here is give that magazine enough time. Maybe it'll open and without it being totally okay. Nope, it's gonna wait for me to download it. It's not gonna let me read it. I was a little worried about that taking too long this morning. The one thing I did want to show you, and I would encourage any of you who are watching this to take maybe your staff iPad that you have that you can use for Square or for TimeStation. Go ahead and download the Nook app and go through this process. It's probably going to take too long for me to wait for this magazine to download and just kind of sit here. So what I would encourage you to do is to go through this process on your own. The hands-on time will also help you get this kind of cemented in your mind of how this works. But the functionality is actually explained pretty well, I think a little bit better than in Zenio. When you first download and start reading a magazine, I think it does a good job of explaining the functionality, where you tap to get to certain menus, how you get to the table of contents, how you can navigate through another page-by-page menu, things like that. I think are explained better in this app when you first open a new magazine than they are in Zenio. And again, I would show you that, but it's taking a while to download this Air and Space magazine. Again, you can change all sorts of settings in here, and if you decide that, okay, if for instance a patron is sharing their iPad with somebody else or sharing their Nook with someone else, they can sign out, and let's say spouses maybe are sharing a device. They can both use the same device by just signing out and signing in. Now that will get rid of anything that they've already downloaded, so they'll have to download it fresh, but that will probably be less of a hassle for them than it is for me right now. We're open, and so we've got some users on the network already, so it's taking a little bit longer for me than it would for somebody probably at their home using their own Wi-Fi. So those are the basics really of using Nook magazines. One thing that I will say is that, and it's not going to let me do that either, darn it. Let me go back here. Maybe it'll let me do this with one of the books. A pretty common thing for, nope, it's not going to let me do that. Okay, so here's a quick or a very similar tutorial to what it looks like whenever you're reading periodicals. So it just pops this up to show you, okay, you can swipe to get from page to page. You can swipe the other direction to go back. Tap this area to bring up reader settings. So you tap right here, and you've got different reader settings, and you can adjust text sizes, things like that. And that's basically what I wanted to show you in the magazine. That's essentially the same tutorial that it shows you, but since books are so much smaller files than magazines, these books were already there and ready to go. Let's just hit the back button here and try one more time. I think, let's go to my library. There we go. Okay, so a pretty common thing in Android apps and iOS may treat this a little bit differently, although they did introduce the long press in a recent iOS update, so it's possible that this works the same way in iOS as well. But in Android, it's very common for a an options menu to pop up whenever you do a long press, or what I would call a hold. You just hold your finger on something rather than tapping it, and this menu pops up within the Nook app. So you can do a variety of things here. You can share this item, you can look at details, you can archive it, you can move it to the cloud, or you can delete it from your account. So the same options are available to magazines. I just can't get it to pop up right now because they're not downloaded all the way. But these same options are available to the magazines as well. So if they want to delete something from their device, they can certainly do that. Or if they just want to archive it or move it to the cloud so that it's off their device, but it's still tied to their account so they can download it later, then they can move it to the cloud or click archive, and it will be taken off of their device. And then it's not taking up space, but they still have access to it later. So any one of those things is possible through magazines as well. Doesn't look like there's a ton of details available for A Tale of Two Cities, so I would say maybe there's more or less depending on the title, but that is the options that are available to all titles that I have seen through the Nook app. Okay, so I think in a roundabout way, using A Tale of Two Cities, I've kind of shown you the majority of the functionality that I wanted to show you through this Nook app. And that's essentially how it works. As new magazines are published, they'll become available through the Missouri Libraries to Go website, and a new round of available titles will be updated. I'm not sure how back issues work. I think the individual titles that they check out and tie to their Barnes & Noble account will stay on their account, similar to the way they do on Zenio, forever. But as far as if they come to it later and they want to check out what happened 2 or 3 months ago, or they want to see a specific article or what have you, I'm not sure how the back issue thing is going to work. I didn't see that in any of the details that we looked at prior to starting this service, and we'll have to just keep an eye on it to see what happens when maybe next week, when some of our weekly magazines turn over and we have a new issue up, we can see kind of what the back issue situation is going to look like. And if necessary, I may put out a new video, just a real short one, showing what that's like, so that you know what's going on there. If you know that this is something that you're going to be really curious about, I would just encourage you again to show up again, maybe in about a week, to the Missouri Libraries to Go site, try it out for yourself, see what the back issue situation is, see what it looks like, and go from there. I don't know that there are any options for notifications like there are on Zenio, where you can say, okay, notify me whenever. You can just check a box and tell it to notify you when a new issue is out. But again, as time goes on, we'll figure out a lot of these things. This just became available Monday, and apparently, according to some of the emails that I saw, we've already had hundreds of checkouts in the consortium as a whole, not at Trails. So we'll see. It may end up being very popular. Again, I think exposure is going to be a big deal, because it will be shown to the regular users of OverDrive, and we have quite a few of those every month. So who knows? It may end up being pretty popular. It is certainly cheaper than Zenio. So if we end up going this route, there's a number of pluses, but there's also minuses as well. So in your practice and in your patrons' experience, please pass that feedback on to me as well, so that as we're evaluating and comparing these two services, Zenio and OverDrive Periodicals, I have as much information as possible, and that way we're not second guessing, or we're not making a decision that later on we find out, oh no, patrons didn't like this after all, or patrons found this really annoying and now it's a big problem. So anyway, please, all feedback is welcome. Please let me know if there's anything else that I can do to help you. And I'm going to check real quickly just to make sure there aren't any questions in the chat. And let's see. I don't see any. So thank you very much for coming, and let me know if there's any other things I can help you with. Thanks.